You may have heard the term sans-serif capitals before and wondered, what even is that? Why should I learn it? And if I did want to learn it, how would I go about learning that? So those are some questions that I'm going to answer in this video. So first of all, what is it? So this first line up here, the words sans-serif capitals are written in sans-serif capitals. Then the word letters down here you can see is different. So this would be considered serif. And if you're thinking about a computer font, a font like Times New Roman or Cambria would be two examples of a serif font. So you can see these little pieces on the end, like right here, and like if you look at the end of the E, these are little decorative additional pieces at the ends of the letter parts. And this piece is called a serif. And sans means without. So sans serif is without these little pieces. So you can see, just looking at this E ends right here and doesn't have any additional decorative pieces like this one does. So this is sans serif. Now, if you're wondering why you should learn it or why you might be interested in learning sans serif capitals, a couple reasons. One of them, specifically for calligraphy and lettering, is it gives you the ability to mix different when I say fonts, I mean like lettering styles. So mix different fonts in your lettering. And for example, this Hello March, you can see I wrote March in a script style, and the word hello is in this is on my iPad, by the way. The word hello is in sans serif capitals. And so if I had written hello in the same sort of script font, then neither of them would really stand out. So using sans serif capitals is a great way to mix fonts and let different words stand out, especially if you're doing something like a longer quote. You wouldn't necessarily want the entire thing to be in calligraphy. You'd want the ability to mix fonts and get something that looks really nice. So if I just hand wrote in my regular print writing hello, it probably wouldn't look this nice, because for this version I was trying and I was using a grid to help me out. So that takes us to the third question. So we've answered what it is and why you would want to learn it. The last question is, how would you learn it? Okay, so let me just take a step back, and like I said, if I told you to just write the capital sans serif alphabet, you would probably just take your normal handwriting, like print, not cursive, and write out all of the letters. And that would be great. We would get lots of different results though. So for example, some people write really, really small, and theirs might look about that size. Some people write really big, like this, and you can see that these letters also look a little bit stretched this way, okay? Another difference that you might see if we had several different people writing out their capital letters would be in the roundness of the letter. So if I take the word or the letter A here, someone else might write it more like that and have a rounded top. Okay, same with like the W. One person might write it like this. One person might write it like that. Same with the M. So there's lots of different letters that have these points here, where some people might make it pointy, some people might make it rounded. Another difference that you'll see, besides just the pointiness or roundness, are actual variations in the capital letters. So one example would be the letter Y. Some people make it like this. Some people make it like this. For J, the variation could be as simple as adding that crossbar on the top. And another thing to look at would be the roundness of the letters. So some people have very rounded, like the letter O or the letter G are almost circular, or if you're thinking of a font, like Century Gothic has a very round appearance. Whereas some people prefer to make them more narrow, like this. Like Arial Narrow would be a sans serif capital font that is much less circular than some other fonts. Okay, the other thing that I've noticed people writing in capital letters is how precise or rushed they are. So if on the left here I'm being kind of rushed and like I write a B and maybe a W, versus really slowing down and taking my time and thinking about the shapes, being cautious and going slowly. It just produces a whole different look. So like this W is a much more symmetrical. You can see that both points are the same width. This one I wrote fast, and the second one ended up being round on the bottom, or like the B started beyond the stem over here, ended a little bit right there, and the curves are different. So those are just some things to think about for if I just told you to write the capitals, how would you write them? Everyone would probably write them differently with some combination of size, pointiness / roundness, variations of the actual letter forms, variations of the roundness, and then how slowly or quickly you would write it. So we are going to tackle teaching you the capital sans-serif alphabet and trying to eliminate as many of these variables as possible so that we can just get right back to the basics. So we are going to be using a grid approach. So we're going to be using almost like graph paper. We'll give you some free guide sheets that you can download, but you can also use any graph paper or dot paper that you have. And we will give it to you in a couple different sizes, just depending on how big you prefer to write. Otherwise, we are going to stick to some principles and only teach you the very basic letter forms and teach you some proportions to get you started with your sans-serif capital lettering. Okay, so throughout this series, we will be releasing a new video every week, and you can subscribe to our channel so that you get notified whenever we release a video. If you're on our email list during this live challenge during March of 2018, you will also receive an email to your inbox every week. Get the guide sheets below, and we will see you in our first lesson on letters.